We were sitting at Olive Garden when my sister lifted her glass to toast me, 36 years old, another year added, allegedly wiser. The laughter around the table was warm in that artificial, polite way people get when the food is paid for and no one expects conflict. Then Laura leaned forward, blonde hair sliding over her shoulder, that familiar rehearsed smile fixed on her face like makeup she'd stopped bothering to wash off. She looked straight at me and spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear, saying her wish while swirling her wine was to never touch me again, ever. Then she laughed, soft but precise, sharp enough to lodge itself between my ribs. No one reacted. Not my sister, not the relatives, not even the waiter, who stood frozen mid-grate with a block of Parmesan like he wasn't sure whether to continue or disappear. I didn't flinch, didn't ask what she meant, didn't scan the table for support or offer a joke to smooth it over. I just nodded, the way you do when someone tells you the forecast and you already know the storm is permanent. She immediately went back to scrolling on her phone as if that sentence hadn't just carved a permanent marker into the timeline of my life. I paid the bill quietly. There was no cake, no candle, no off-key birthday song, just the sound of notification pings as we walked to the car. That night, she slipped into bed like she always did, turning away on her side, TikTok murmuring low through her phone, and I lay there listening to canned laughter, knowing without drama or panic that it would be the last birthday I'd ever spend next to her. I didn't leave physically, not yet, but something inside me shut with a final click. The next morning, I didn't make her coffee, didn't top off her gas tank, didn't remind her about her hair appointment at 2 in the afternoon like I always did. She didn't notice. She never noticed the weight of the small things until they were gone. Around noon, she sent a message asking if everything was okay. I left it unread. That night, she came home late while I sat at the kitchen table reading. She paused like she expected a comment. Opened the fridge to find nothing waiting for her, no leftovers, no takeout, no effort. I had already eaten, alone, half an hour earlier. She closed the door softly. What she didn't understand was that I wasn't angry. Anger still assumes there's something worth fighting for. What I felt was subtraction. I began quietly taking inventory, emotionally, financially, digitally, subscriptions, passwords, access points, every detail she'd grown accustomed to without ever acknowledging. Things were adjusted, rerouted, erased, not out of revenge or bitterness, but like a man exiting a stage without applause. She had made a wish, and I had always been the kind of man who granted wishes fully and without announcement. The change was subtle, which is the only way it lasts. Not a storm, but a drought. The following morning, I left earlier than usual for no real reason other than not wanting to breathe the same air, not wanting to hear her slippers slap softly against the floor or smell the lotion she used to wear for me. I sat in my truck in a Starbucks parking lot drinking terrible coffee and watching strangers hurry through lives they thought were urgent. Around 9, she texted again, asking if everything was okay. I replied with a single word, yep, no emoji, no softness, just 3 letters that landed cold. That night, she was home before me, already changed into an old blue tank top she used to sleep in back when we actually shared a bed instead of square footage. She was pretending not to be affected, playing her part. I walked past without slowing. She looked up, stopped scrolling, her mouth opening slightly before closing again. She didn't ask where I'd been, and that's when I knew it had begun. The unraveling. On Tuesday, she cooked spaghetti, once my favorite, and even lit a vanilla candle she used to save for date nights. I came in, nodded, sat, ate slowly, offered no compliments, no second helping, just silence and a polite thank you at the end, like a guest finishing a meal in a stranger's house. When I set my fork down, she reached for my hand, and I pulled away as if I hadn't noticed. Her eyes searched my face for something, maybe the man who used to reach back, but he wasn't there. The next morning, she asked if I wanted to go to an outdoor concert we'd talked about weeks earlier. I told her I already had plans. She didn't ask with who. Later that night, I heard her in the bathroom, makeup spread out, hair straightener heating up, things she hadn't touched in weeks. She walked past me without making eye contact, and I didn't look up. I started small, canceling the Netflix account she never realized was tied to my email. Later, she stood in the living room holding the remote, frowning at the screen, muttering that something was wrong with the login. I didn't answer. She said it louder. I shrugged and told her to try again. It didn't work. She stared for a moment, but I had already moved on, reading, scrolling, doing anything that didn't involve fixing problems for someone who only noticed me when things broke. Distance has a sound to it, and at first you don't hear it, but eventually the silence grows loud enough that even practiced performers forget their lines. She didn't know it yet, but the man she used to reach for was gone, not damaged or lost, just erased, and I wasn't coming back. It began with perfume, the one she used to wear back when she actually wanted my attention, sweet and calculated. One evening, she walked past me in a fitted black dress I hadn't seen in over a year and said she was meeting friends. But the way she lingered near the mirror, adjusting her lipstick and stealing glances in my direction, told the real story. She wanted to see if I'd react, if I'd ask questions, if I'd care. I didn't. I didn't ask where she was going or who she'd be with. I glanced up from my phone, nodded once, and went back to reading. She hesitated a second too long, then left, and I never checked the time she came home. 2 nights later, she appeared in the bedroom wearing lingerie she hadn't touched since things were still good, when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, when touch still meant something. She stood in the doorway like it was a scene she expected me to play my part in, like desire could be summoned on cue with lace and timing. I didn't blink. I said goodnight, rolled over, and turned off the light. She stood there in the dark longer than she wanted me to know, then walked away with no attempt at being quiet. It wasn't rejection that cut her, it was indifference, and that wound goes deeper. The next morning, she cooked breakfast, a full spread, eggs, bacon, toast, even my favorite coffee blend she used to forget to buy. She set it down like a peace offering that had already expired. I ate in silence, thanked her, stood up, and left. No smile, no kiss, no conversation. She stayed by the sink holding her mug, staring at the empty chair. That afternoon, she messaged me saying she missed me. I read it and didn't respond. 3 hours later, she asked if I wanted to do something that night. I replied with 2 words, not tonight. She didn't text again. After that, she tried smaller things, sitting closer on the couch, brushing against me like it was accidental, asking if I wanted to rewatch one of our old shows. I let her talk, but my attention was always elsewhere, on my phone, the clock, anything that didn't involve reaching back. She was trying to reconnect with a version of me that no longer existed, at least not for her, and the harder she tried, the clearer it became that she had no idea how far gone I already was. She thought it was a phase, that silence was temporary. What she didn't understand was that her own actions had built this gap piece by piece, dismissive glance by dismissive glance, year after year, and now she was stuck on the opposite side, not because I slammed the door, but because I stopped holding it open. She liked to call herself independent, wore it like a badge, claimed she didn't need anyone, even though every credit card payment, every vacation, every grocery run and oil change came from my planning and my account. Either she never noticed or she assumed it would always be there, like electricity or Wi-Fi. So I began pulling the wires quietly. Hulu disappeared first, then Amazon Prime, then Spotify Premium. Each login error brought a confused pause and an offhand complaint aimed in my direction. I shrugged and stayed silent. I stopped transferring extra money into our joint account. The shell stayed, but the real funds had already been moved to a private account she didn't know existed, clean and legal. Then came the credit card. She tried to use it at Home Depot one Saturday and called me from the parking lot saying it was declined. I told her to try another card and said I'd look into it later. I never did. She texted again that evening. I didn't reply. By Monday, I had changed the passwords to every shared financial platform, banking, insurance, even the backup cloud folder with our documents. I didn't lock her out, I simply reclaimed my access. She hadn't fully realized it yet, but she would when she tried to book her spa appointment, when she noticed the gym membership she never used was canceled, when she checked our flight credits from the postponed Denver trip and saw my name alone on the account. She'd feel it eventually, the quiet subtraction. She used to say love was about showing up, but she stopped doing that years ago. And now I was only matching the energy she taught me. No arguments, no raised voices, just the slow dismantling of a man who had made her life easier deciding to stop. I watched her that week scrolling through Pinterest, saving images of backyard fire pits and minimalist bedrooms like the house we shared was still part of her future, And I knew what she didn't. That future no longer included her. She hadn't lost me when she said she didn't want my touch. She lost me when she believed I'd stay anyway. I wasn't punishing her, I was preparing, because the day she truly noticed what was missing wouldn't be the end. It would be the beginning of everything she took for granted, finally being gone. It was a Thursday evening when the fractures finally reached her. I came home from work and found her standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, positioned by the refrigerator like a student waiting to be called out. Her posture was rigid, her tone defensive before she even spoke. She asked if I had canceled the cleaning service. I said yes. She paused, processing, then asked why. I told her it didn't make sense to keep paying for things we didn't actually need anymore. She opened her mouth to respond, then stopped, cycling through versions of herself. Gentle, sarcastic, sharp, none of them landing. I picked up my water bottle and walked past her. The silence didn't just settle in the room, it sank into the structure. She was beginning to understand, not everything, but enough to know something fundamental had shifted. The next morning, she was up early, hair done, makeup light but intentional. She made breakfast again, 2 plates, coffee, eggs, toast, like a rehearsal of our past. I nodded, ate, thanked her, and left while she watched me the entire time. Distance never announces itself with speeches. It spreads like fog, and one day you wake up unable to see the person you thought you knew. She started calling more during the day, quick check-ins asking if I needed anything, if we were still on for dinner next week with friends, ending messages with "Miss you." I responded politely, briefly, never more than required, every reply a reflection of what years of neglect had shaped me into. That weekend, I went to Home Depot alone, picked paint samples, studied lighting, ordered new furniture for the guest room using my private card, pieces she hadn't chosen and hadn't seen because that room wouldn't be for guests anymore. That night, she stepped into the garage and froze when she noticed an empty storage shelf. She asked where the boxes had gone. I told her I'd started clearing things out. She didn't ask what I meant, but her eyes widened, alert, scanning the corners of a house she instinctively knew was slipping away. That was when the balance of power shifted for real. The control she once held through distance, through withholding, through assuming I'd always return to her side of the bed no matter how many times she turned away first, was gone. Now I moved like I didn't need proximity at all, and that terrified her more than anger ever could. She was starting to see this wasn't space anymore, it was precision, and I wasn't stopping. The first time someone else noticed, it wasn't because of anything I said, but because of what I didn't say. We were at a small family dinner at her sister's house, casual jokes, wine, backyard lights, the kind of evening we used to enjoy when pretending was still easy. She tried to play the role, held my hand at the table, laughed a little too loud, asked me about my week like we hadn't spent it passing each other in silence. I answered calmly and briefly, letting the words fall flat. Her sister caught it first and pulled me aside, asking if I was okay, eyes searching. I smiled politely and said I'd never been clearer. She didn't push, but I saw the unspoken question forming. Later that night, Lauren came into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, studying me like she was trying to read a language she'd never bothered to learn. She said I'd changed. I didn't respond because she was right and because the man she was talking to was already a memory. She had helped erase him with every cold shoulder, every dismissive comment, every moment of intimacy used like leverage. That weekend, a mutual friend texted me asking if everything was okay between us because she seemed off. That's when I realized the ripple had spread beyond the house. People were noticing her unraveling, not mine, and she knew it. She began overcorrecting, posting old couple photos with captions about gratitude and growth, tagging me like digital affection could rebuild what she'd dismantled. I didn't engage, didn't repost, didn't comment. I watched as she tried to repaint a wall that was already collapsing, unaware that real silence seeps through everything, and her world had become too quiet to ignore. At Target, I watched her hesitate at the register, reaching first for the joint card and then switching to her own. She didn't know I had already drained the shared account weeks earlier, but I saw the flicker of fear cross her face, the question she didn't want answered forming anyway, how much was already gone. She still believed she could steer this back, that eventually I'd snap and fight for us, but I wasn't fighting anymore. I was observing from a distance as the structure she built began to collapse. She had created a world where I was optional, and now she was standing alone inside it. On a rainy Tuesday, she finally dropped the performance. No makeup, no polished energy, just standing in the bedroom doorway in an oversized hoodie, barefoot on cold flooring, holding a mug she hadn't touched. She asked if I was happy. The question landed dull and heavy between us. I waited before answering, really looking at her, and for the first time in a long while, she wasn't acting, wasn't trying to control the narrative, she was exposed. It didn't matter because by then I no longer trusted her vulnerability. It felt rehearsed, late, unconvincing. She stepped closer and said she missed me, that everything felt wrong. I nodded and agreed. Her eyes glassed, but the tears didn't fall yet. She sat beside me on the bed, our legs barely touching, and I think she believed proximity could undo months of distance, that sharing a roof meant something was still salvageable. I didn't move toward her, and that was when she understood she wasn't waiting for an answer anymore. She was sitting in one. Later that night, I heard her on the phone with her mother, the door not fully closed, her voice unsure and small, nothing like the controlled confidence she showed everyone else. She said she didn't know what happened, that I was there, but not there, that I didn't argue or react, that she couldn't tell if I hated her or if she simply no longer existed to me. That was the moment she finally felt the emptiness she had been feeding me for years. She always thought control came from withholding, and now she was starving inside the silence. The next morning, she made pancakes like it was an apology you could plate. I didn't comment. She sat across from me watching my face like she expected a signal, but I had already checked out long before the first bite. She used to pull away like affection was something she rationed, and now she was offering it like a refund I didn't want. She asked if I wanted to get away for the weekend, clear our heads, try again. I told her I already had plans. Her lips tightened because, for the first time, she understood she wasn't the priority anymore. She was being left unread emotionally, permanently, and there was no rewind. That Friday, she staged it like a rescue attempt. I walked in and smelled chicken marsala, the dish she used to make when dinners still meant connection. Real candles were lit, music played softly, and she was dressed carefully, wearing the same blue dress from the night I told her I loved her for the first time. She wasn't trying for me. She was trying for the memory of me before the distance, before the dismissals, before she wished me untouchable on my birthday. I paused, took it in, set my keys down, and sat like it was any other night. No reaction, no praise, just calm. She served the plates with shaking hands, smiling through something she was barely holding together. We ate in silence. She tried small talk, asked about my day, suggested a quiet weekend away with no distractions. I nodded, but didn't commit. She offered wine. I declined. Halfway through dinner, she asked me to look at her. I did, and something shifted, not in me, but in her. She saw the absence, the finality, the vacancy where effort no longer reached. Her smile collapsed, her hand pulled back before it reached mine, like it touched something hot. She asked if we were okay. I said we were fine, and that word fractured what little hope she had left because fine means there's nothing left to fix. After dinner, I stood, thanked her, and went upstairs while she remained at the table staring at the candles as if they might explain what she had lost. She didn't come to bed that night and fell asleep on the couch instead. The next morning, she looked up at me with smeared makeup and asked if we could talk. I told her I was meeting someone. She didn't ask who because she already knew the man she was trying to reach was gone, replaced by someone steady, quiet, and already moving forward. I didn't need to explain anything after that because the silence had already done the work. She began to unravel on her own, and I didn't intervene, not because I wanted to watch her fall, but because I had stopped being her safety net a long time ago. People around her noticed the shift. Coworkers stopped dropping by. She used to host wine nights, always loud, polished, magnetic, the center of every room. Now her phone sat still, no buzzes, no invitations, just long stares at the screen like she was waiting for something that used to arrive effortlessly. Even her sister called less. I hadn't told anyone a story, hadn't complained or defended myself, but the absence of warmth speaks louder than accusations ever could. Remove presence from someone's life, and eventually others feel the cold too. One night, I overheard her on the phone with a friend, crying softly, saying she didn't understand what was happening, that I was distant, indifferent, that nothing she did got a reaction anymore, not even anger. She whispered that I didn't care enough to fight. That was when it finally landed for her. Indifference isn't an emotion, it's a funeral without a speech. She started staying out later, sometimes coming home carrying a perfume that wasn't hers, not because she was cheating, but because she wanted proof she could still make me feel something. I didn't look up from my book. She wasn't chasing attention anymore. She was chasing relevance. Online, she tried harder, posting old vacation photos with captions about memories and growth, pretending the past was still current. The engagement was thinner, the comments generic, because people sense fractures even through filters. Silence leaks through everything. One evening, she came home and found her spare key no longer worked. I had changed the locks. She called me, and I didn't answer. Later, she found me sitting calmly in the backyard reading. She asked why. I told her it was time for updates. She nodded slowly and went upstairs without another word. That night, she didn't sleep in our bed or on the couch. She went to the guest room, the one I had quietly refurnished. Everything in it was new, but none of it belonged to her. She looked like a renter in a house she once thought she owned, and I was already living a different life, even if the walls hadn't changed yet. She was still hoping for rescue while I was already on solid ground, watching her drift toward the storm she built. I waited for morning light to cut through the blinds. She was still in the guest room, or pretending to be, her breathing shifting when she heard me move through the house. She was listening for a sound that meant I'd stayed, but the decision had already been made. I didn't leave a note because that would have suggested there was something left to explain. There wasn't. I packed slowly, methodically, most of my things already gone in stages she never noticed, or maybe noticed and refused to name. I passed through the kitchen one last time, magnets on the fridge from places we never went, trips always postponed, dreams treated like decorations instead of plans. The house was quiet in a way music can't fix. I opened the front door, stepped outside, and felt nothing but calm. By the time she came downstairs, the driveway was empty. My truck was gone. The keys she once tossed at me during an argument were placed neatly on the counter. The garage opener had been removed from her car weeks earlier. She called twice. I didn't answer. She messaged asking if we could talk. I read it and didn't respond because there was nothing left to say. She once told me on my birthday that her wish was to never touch me again, so I granted it fully, not just my hands, but my presence, my warmth, my protection, my voice. I didn't leave in anger, I left with clarity. She had been subtracting from me for years, and I finally finished the equation. Not hate, not revenge, just absence. Some people leave loudly, some burn everything down. I just walked away because silence, when it's final, is louder than any goodbye. She stood in that quiet house, scrolling through old photos, rereading messages, replaying moments, trying to locate the exact second everything slipped beyond her reach, while I stopped reaching back entirely. I didn't vanish, I didn't ghost, I didn't punish, I simply stopped showing up where respect had already left the room. What she felt wasn't abandonment, it was the consequence of years of distance finally coming due. I had given her exactly what she asked for, fully and without drama, and in doing so, I reclaimed myself. No speeches, no closure talk, no last argument to circle back to, just a clean ending shaped by silence. She learned too late that when someone stops fighting, it doesn't mean they don't care, it means they already grieved what was lost. And while she searched for noise to fill the gap, I chose peace, walked forward, and never looked back.